It's always challenging at first, but the only way you're going to create true lasting change is if you change that identity. And the only way you're going to be able to change your identity is you freaking take action towards your goals.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast.
Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. I am the Fitness CEO, your host, Bryce Henson, and I got an awesome episode lined up for you today. It's a solo episode. I'm going to be sharing a personal growth story, a business story that can really be applicable to your life. And the message today and the topic of this conversation is I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm going to give you some insights on what happened, how we overcame that, but more importantly, be able to provide you principles to better your life. And as I think back, before I get into the tangible takeaways, when I was going through this journey, for those of you new to the channel, I've lived in Southern California since 2004, but originally I'm from the Midwest. But most people don't know that my first 10 years, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's important because I grew up in a home that was riddled with addiction. You see, my father was a drug addict. He was addicted to gambling, and he was also an alcoholic. The trifecta, not necessarily conducive for a good family upbringing. And as you would imagine, a lot of challenges and turbulence, came from that. And thankfully, by the grace of God, my mom got us out of that situation into greener pastures, where we were able to live a more really challenging, stressful life, especially from a financial and resources perspective. But thankfully, didn't have visibility to the addictions that I saw in my earlier childhood up until I was 10 years old. And I always like to preface, or at least I'm going to. My father's, from what I know and what I remember, not a bad person. Just unfortunately, struggled with some addictions that really were catastrophic to his life and catastrophic to many people's life for that matter. As you would imagine, as I teed up the intro to this particular episode, it was a very humbling realization when I too figured out that I also was an alcoholic, and that was very, very humbling. But it also gave me the vigor and the motivation to be a better person and to overcome this obstacle, so I could, personally grow myself and be a positive force, in my life. So that all in mind, as I moved to Michigan, I started drinking alcohol, like most kids do in high school and whatnot, but I noticed something pretty different from the onset. I remember the very first time I drank alcohol. I think it was vodka. We were at a high school party my junior, senior year, and I remember, taking a drink, then two drinks, and then before you know it, way overshot the mark. And that would be a common theme for me as I, continue drinking alcohol. And I take a step back, and I didn't know this at the time, but what I've learned about, alcohol, and also I do want to preface before I go in any further, this episode is not to shame you if you drink alcohol or to shame alcohol in and of itself. It's a very, very powerful drug, but really for me, it's about alcohol and what it does to my body. And I like to say that I'm allergic to alcohol, and you can probably relate. Maybe someone who's allergic to fish or shrimp. One of my buddies, Jake, is, or nuts as an example. If you have a food allergy and you're allergic to those things, it's probably not a good idea that you ingest those things. And that's the same thing with me and alcohol. So I also want to set the record straight and be able to lean into that a little bit as well. But for me, and what I've learned over the years is there's two types of people that drink alcohol. There's the type of person, I would say 90%, I've seen a lot of studies, the vast majority of population, when they drink alcohol, maybe you have a cocktail or two, and after a couple, you feel a little woozy, you feel a little buzz, and your body thinks, oh, I'm good now. I'm probably going to want to drink some water. That's how the vast majority of people's digestion systems occur once they consume alcohol. But there's about 8 to 10% of us out there, and I'm one of these people, that the opposite is true. Once you have a drink or two, instead of the signal thinking to yourself, oh, shoot, I probably should slow it down, drink some water. For me, it's the opposite. It's like, all right, I'm in first gear. Now I got to get to fifth and sixth as soon as humanly possible. And this phenomenon, I didn't fully realize that that's not normal. But the way I can normalize it would be for you, if you're watching this episode and you don't have an issue with alcohol, would be sugar. Most people can relate. When they have a little bit of sugar, the next thing you know, they want to eat more sugar, and this craving, develops. And before you know it, the bag of candy is completely gone. Well, that's me and my system in alcohol, and the story of an alcoholic as well. Now, both situations, sugar and alcohol, long term can have really bad effects on your body, your mind, your soul. But I would say alcohol has more severe effects in the moment, and it makes at least me go crazy, and it makes people do really bad things. So I also, want to preface that. And for me, in my drinking career, which started late, into my teens into high school, it carried on for about 15 years through my early 30s, and I didn't really even realize I had a drinking problem. The first time it dawned on me, I'll never forget, I was 26 years old. I was living in Orange County, California, and I was out in the weekend with some of my buddies. Had a great old time, but I woke up on Sunday morning after a 2-day bender, and I was confused. I didn't know who was with me in the apartment. There was a few friends there, and if I was trying to recall the night before, and I couldn't remember it with specificity. And I would love to say that was the first time it happened, but unfortunately it wasn't. I had, developed some habits throughout college. I was a fraternity boy and all that, gained a lot of, I guess, experience in the drinking world, specifically binge drinking. So I was never the type of drinker that would drink on a daily basis. In fact, it was, few and far between, on the weekends. But unfortunately, I would overshoot the mark way more times than I admit. So that experience when I was 26 years old, when I woke up and I was groggy and a massive hangover and I was confused and I was regretting what I did the night before, regretting some of the things I said, very humbling moment. That was the first time that I thought to myself, wow, I might have an issue with this substance that has wreaked havoc on my father's life, his father's life, probably his father's life, been really encapsulated within my family's DNA. But if you can believe, that was the first moment that occurred to me, but I didn't stop drinking then. I actually drank for more than a handful of years later, up until my early 30s. And ironically, I had a really hard time even still, even though I had these flashes that maybe I had a drinking problem. When I thought of it, a typical alcoholic, I thought of someone who was homeless, that was living under a bridge, that would drink daily out of a brown paper bag. And certainly, my friend, there are a lot of alcoholics that drink in that capacity, but there's a lot of alcoholics that don't, that are, functional alcoholics. There's a huge spectrum. So for me, I had a hard time really identifying, because I was thinking that was the type of alcoholic, or that was what an alcoholic was: homeless, living under a bridge, drinking daily out of a brown paper bag. And for me, it was the opposite. Everything buttoned together, really dialed in from a school perspective, from a work perspective in my 20s and my 30s. But the weekends, I would let loose a little bit. And initially it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then it was Friday. Then it was only Saturdays. I actually drank less frequently over the course of time. But what I realized, even to my early 30s, I drank more aggressively. And, when I look back at my drinking career, I realized, there was a lot of shame and guilt and doubt, and just a lot of really sad experiences and frustrating experience that hurt me, that hurt my family, that hurt my loved ones, and certainly would never want to replicate again. But all this to say, if you can believe, that wasn't enough to make me stop drinking. It wasn't until the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back was seeing a family member, a loved one, someone who is really near and dear to me, go through the same type of challenge. And he was a great dude. He is a great dude. Awesome person, very charismatic, loves the world. People love him, just incredible people. And growing up, just so much talent and potential. And it was really inspiring to see him in many capacities. But it was also, on the other side of the coin, very frustrating to see over a period of few years. It wasn't, one particular situation, but over a few-year period of how alcohol got into his life and made him unaccountable from a personal perspective, burning personal relationships. Then from a work perspective, burning work relationships, from a relationship perspective, but also to, having issues with work and having to find new work. And then lastly, from a legal perspective. And that was just really, really gut-wrenching from our family and from me specifically, how close I was to him, to watch him suffer, especially when I saw all the greatness in him. After a series of events, it became very clear that we needed to have a family intervention, and we did. I recruited some family or whatnot, and we sat down with this individual and, had the conversation, and it was a very tough conversation. It was tough love, but meant, from a very positive light, and wanting to, being able to provide feedback that wasn't easy to hear, but it was important to hear. And, candidly, it wasn't overly well received, but I'll never forget the straw that broke the camel's back for me, to go through that very painful situation, especially knowing all the baggage and the trauma that's happened in my family, all my own experiences that I just, articulated to you, and then seeing this loved one in distress. It was just absolutely gut-wrenching. And I'll never forget this. I went home after, having that conversation with a few other family members and having that intervention, if you will, and it was just heavy on me. I thought about it, was weighing on my shoulders. It was weighing every fiber of my being. And I went to sleep. And I woke up, and I'll never forget, I looked in the mirror, and I took a deep, deep, dark look at the mirror, and I realized our society many times will forgive criminals, but not hypocrites. And I can understand why. And here I was, seeing my loved one struggle. But if I reflected my own self, if I looked in the mirror, when I realized I acted in the same way. There was many times where, granted, I didn't have the legal and the business issues that came with it. In the grand scheme of things, I was very lightly impacted. However, the shame, the guilt, all the negativity that this caused in my life, and then I was seeing this in another person, someone I loved and I adored, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, like I am a hypocrite. Like taking my own inventory, how am I going to ask this person to do something that I can't even do myself? And for me, that was the big aha. And I realized all this pain, all this challenge, all this trauma, this cycle of addiction, like when is it going to end? Like this is freaking insanity. It's literally destroyed my father's life, his father's life, my family's, and it's destroyed so many aspects of my life. And now seeing this loved one, this is absolutely insane. Like absolutely insane. When is this cycle of addiction going to end? And that was the moment that I realized like I could do no more. I needed to stop. I needed to remove alcohol from my life completely. Even if it was infrequent, a few times a month, it needed to go because I needed to take the high road. I needed to live a life that I'm proud of. I also needed to live with moral authority, meaning I walk my own talk. And at the very least for my loved one, maybe I can never help, my loved one to be able to abstain from alcohol. But what I could do is I could help myself. I could lead by example and live a life well lived. And that was the decision I made in December of 2016. And I'm happy to report that's when I stopped drinking alcohol, removed it from my life completely. But that's not where the story ends. And as it goes on, when I made that realization, then I stopped drinking. And I'm a highly disciplined guy, but that happened for a few months. But I started, having these feelings of anxiety and doubt and anger. And I was just, getting short in a wide variety of ways with my family people, with my work colleagues. And I realized that this is bigger than me. I needed help. So I ended up taking a step back and doing a lot of research and, unconventional ways, conventional ways. And I found a specific 12-step program. And there's many out there that really welcome me in. And I'll never forget that first day when I walked in, when I opened the door, that door is probably the heaviest door in my life. And literally I was so embarrassed to walk through that door. And I walked that door, and for the first couple meetings within the 12-step program, I didn't even identify as an alcoholic. I was so nervous and scared, even though I was in a room filled with other guys in the same capacity. But after about a month in is when I finally identified myself, and I said, hey, my name is Bryce and I'm alcoholic. And it was like the weight of the world just got dropped off me. And at that period of time, I knew that I needed to continue with this program. I needed to continue with the support, the community, and I needed to make sure that I never drank alcohol again. And forever's a long time, but what I can promise you is today I'm not going to drink. And that's the attitude and mentality I've taken with me every step of the way. And it hasn't been easy. There's been great days, there's been bad days, and there's been many days, all in the middle. But that's the approach I've taken. And I'm happy to report that, again, December 31st, 2016 was the last time I drank alcohol. And that's the last time I plan, God willing.
Hey there, my name is Bryce Henson, CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, and you might know me as the host of this podcast, but what you might not know is that I started my fitness business journey as a Fit Body location owner. And since 2012, I've been able to impact my community while creating financial freedom, both for myself and my family too. You see, by using Fit Body's proven business model, we give you all the support and guidance you need to be your own boss and build a business that aligns with your passion for fitness. And being we are the absolute best at launching and scaling our franchise partners gyms, we are now excited to announce our 100 member guarantee. Now you might be thinking, Bryce, what is that? Well, we are so confident that we'll launch your Fit Body Bootcamp location with well over 100 paying members from day one on your grand opening that if we don't, we'll run your marketing till we do. That's how confident we are in our ability to support you and guide you through this process. So if you're interested in creating more income through impact, click the link somewhere around this video to apply.
This all in mind, that was a deep story. It was a dense story. It was a personal story, but it was a story that really impacted me in so many ways, because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have perspective. But if I didn't make that decision to stop drinking alcohol, I would not be in front of you today. I would not be the fitness CEO, would not be the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp. I would not have opened businesses and launched many locations and changed lives in the process. There's no way it would happen at this grand of scale without that one decision. So this in mind, I have 6 lessons throughout this particular story that are very applicable to your personal life, to your life with your family, to your relationships, and also to your life from being a business owner and future entrepreneur. So the first lesson is the focus on increasing your character. Now, it's interesting, it's counterintuitive. With the 12-step program that I joined, they refer to it as a program of rigorous honesty. And I thought to myself, I was so confused. I was like, I'm here try to stop drinking alcohol. What in the heck does telling the truth and being honest have to do with drinking alcohol, or not drinking alcohol for that matter? And my friend, what I realized throughout the course of the journey, it has everything to do with not drinking alcohol. The way you show up, your character, the fact that your word needs to be, gold, that all goes into your character as a person, as a leader, and your ability to stand up straight with your shoulders, head back or shoulders back, and your body composition, your body positioning tall. This is all really important to be the best leader and the best person you could possibly be for your family and for your business. The better character you have, the better and the more empowered that you're going to be able to lead your following. So for me, the number one focus is building my character versus not drink alcohol. And it turns out when I build my character, when I run a program of rigorous honesty, then guess what happens? Then I'm less likely to feel the urge of drinking alcohol, and it's made all the difference. So the second learning lesson that I want to share is the fact of the beginning was the hardest for sure, and it got easier with time. Now, is it completely easy even to this day? No. Like, I have my good days, I have my bad days. That's just the reality of the situation. But I remember, the first 12 months and thinking to myself many times throughout that journey, like, holy smokes, this is so hard. Is it always going to be this hard? And the answer is no. As you continue to put one foot in front of the other, and with me specifically in this journey, what I've realized is after the first year, things got exponentially easier. And I look back at my first business journey, my first fitness journey. It's the same thing. The first 6 months of my fitness journey in early 2007, from a transformational perspective, were the hardest for sure. There were so many days where I'm thinking to myself, like, is it always going to be this way? And the answer was no. Once you create that momentum and you build that habit, things get easier. That's the same with launching my first fitness business in 2012, Yorba Linda Fit Body Bootcamp. Like, I was so excited to launch the business, but in the year 2013, because I opened it in November of 2012, but in 2013, that was the hardest year of business. You're learning, you're growing. There's so many things coming at you. By far is the hardest. And now fast forward, is it absolutely easy? No. Success is rented. It's never owned, and rent is due every single day. That's the method that you need to look and attack life. But the reality situation is it's gotten exponentially better. And from a business perspective, when I was there in 2013, training so many sessions and living there, now fast forward, I have one Fit Body Bootcamp location in Mission Viejo, and I'm there 45 minutes a week. And I have an incredible team, and it certainly has gotten so much easier throughout the course of the time. So that is the learning lesson that I've taken with me as number 2. The third one is I had these fears of being chastised and ridiculed if I was ever to communicate to that 12-step group that, hey, I'm an alcoholic. And in fact, the first time that I uttered those words, it's so counterintuitive. It's like all in your head. I thought people were going to laugh at me, going to point fingers at me and be like, you alcoholic, how dare you? And the reality of the situation is that didn't happen at all. In fact, it was the opposite. So what I learned in this process is bullet number 3, the fears that you have, many times they're just fears. They don't materialize. And that's so true, in the business world as well. Like, as a business owner, I'm always thinking of all these things that could happen or what would happen or the fears and the doubts that I have. And 99% of the time, they never materialize. So whether it's me drinking alcohol, being able to confess the first time, or in my business life, most times fears don't actually materialize. And that's a great message for you, especially when you're starting your journey. Bullet point number 4, lesson number 4 is a follow-up on that, which is it actually created connection. So opposite of, feeling I was going to be chastised, it actually created more connection with people. Number 1 with my family. Number 2, with my business people. Number 3, with my following here, from a fitness perspective. When I started sharing my story, what I realized is like people started to open up and they feel more connected, because guess what? I'm not the only alcoholic or recovering alcoholic on this earth. And whether you're listening to this and you have a problem with alcohol or not, there's a high probability you have someone in your life that has been affected, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, with other types of addiction. So by sharing your story and being vulnerable, authentic, you actually create connection. And that's an incredible learning lesson as you're embarking on your business journey. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay sometimes to say, hey, I don't know. You're not going to get chastised. You're not going to get ridiculed. Yes, you'll be criticized in life and business. At the end of the day, by you being alive, you're going to be subjected to criticism. But the reality of the situation is, most times when you're real, when you're authentic and you're vulnerable and you put your hand up in the air for help, people want to help you. People want to connect with you. And that's a great life lesson. That's a great business lesson. Number 5 is identity is the lasting change. Identity is the thing that's going to really ensure that long-term, whatever decision you make, stays hold and takes root. And what I mean by that is when I first stopped drinking alcohol, I'll give you a few examples. When I first stopped drinking alcohol, that first year of 2017, I would say, if someone asked me about drinking alcohol, I'd say, oh, I stopped drinking alcohol. That is very different. That identity, when I say that, when I speak those words out, what that really is saying is I still identify as someone who drinks alcohol, but temporarily or for the moment, I've stopped. Now, if you were out and about and someone asked me if I drink alcohol, do I want a cocktail or want a beer? I say, no, oh, no, thanks. I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. That's just a completely different mind shift. It's a completely different identity shift. And interestingly enough, and this is part of culture, but alcohol is one of the only drugs that people peer pressure you into doing. It's kind of sometimes, especially in social circles, which is changing, which is a good thing. And, I'm going to plant my flag on that. But if you, say that you don't drink alcohol, sometimes people are like, are you serious? Like, are you okay? Whereas can you imagine going to a party and someone offers you heroin? You're like, no, I don't do heroin. And they look at you like, wait, really? Like, that's kind of a wild, specific, analogy on that, but it's true. It's absolutely true. So for me, especially in social settings, it was awkward at first. And especially when people want to be like, hey, Bryce, you want to, drink, you want a beer, you want a cocktail? At first it was a little awkward, but I realized that, hey, my identity has changed. I don't drink alcohol and I show up that way and I let that be known from a confidence perspective. And that identity shift is everything. And I also can use that from a fitness lens. Back in 2007, when I started my first fitness journey, for those of you who've been following the show, it probably took me 2 years before I fully identified as like a fit guy. It was a journey. It was a process. And the same with business ownership. When I first launched my first Fit Body, when I said I was the owner of a gym, it was kind of weird at first, but then after a period of time, you get used to it. Same with when I joined our Fit Body Bootcamp corporate team. I was the vice president. It sounded weird at first until my identity changed. And the same with, being the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp. It's always challenging at first, which I guess is the big message here, point number 5 about your identity. It's always challenging at first, but the only way you're going to create true lasting change is if you change that identity. And the only way you're going to be able to change your identity is you freaking take action towards your goals. Woo! Got excited about that one. All right, so to round us out, the identity shift is number 5, the 5th learning lesson. And learning lesson number 6, it has created massive, massive, massive confidence in my life by putting down the drink. And for you, it might be alcohol or whatever it is, whatever promise that you know you need to fulfill, but you can make that promise and fulfill that promise, that will exponentially increase your confidence, just like this has done this for me. And the reason I say this, when you break down self-confidence, really all it is self-trust. When you make a promise, do you keep that promise? If you do, you have created a self-trust mechanism in your mind and that commitment, and therefore you trust yourself more, therefore you are more confident. That is the bottom line. The opposite is also true. When you say you're going to wake up at a certain time, or you say you're not going to drink alcohol, you say you're not going to do this or that, but then you actually do it like I did many times throughout my 20s and early 30s. There was many times where I woke up and I was like, shoot, I'm not going to drink alcohol again. Well, guess what? I freaking drank alcohol again until I made the decision, until I planted my flag that I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore. And when I did that, then I kept the promise to myself, and that created so much self-trust, that created so much self-confidence. And my friend, you need that in life. You need that with your family. You need that with your community, and you definitely need that being a business owner and being a business entrepreneur. So my friend, I know I was passionate today, but this is something that has caused a lot of pain, but also fulfillment in my life. And hopefully by me sharing my story, my vulnerability, that empowers you to carry your own cross to whatever it is for you. It's empowered you to take control of your life, figure out what's important to you, eliminate whatever's not, and keep the promises to yourself. When you do that, you are going to be way better off. And that's really the point of this episode today. So my friend, I hope you got a lot of value from this episode. Assuming you did, my one call to action would be to like this video. That would mean a lot for me and for us. And aside from that, please remember, no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time is now. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.